Hello, glass blowers. We're going to learn how to use the blow hose, which is a difficult tool to master because on top of the other things that you were already doing to blow glass, you now have to keep track of where this floppy, waving around hose is that can tangle around the pipe or you, and it can really gum up the works. So there's four things to keep in mind when you are using the blow hose. One is where you're going to leave it. I like to leave mine on the far rail, just as far back as the near rail will allow, or kind of just behind where the seat begins. Two is when to put the hose on. Usually I'll put it on when I'm walking from the Marver to the Glory, and you can just grab it and go. Three is when to take it off, and four is how to move around with it. So to put it on, whether you're standing beside the bench and you just want to pick it up, or if you're kind of just rushing off to the Glory and breezing by the bench, you can pick it up with your right hand. You can have the pipe resting on the yoke or on the bench rail. You can put the mouthpiece on, and then your left hand or your right hand has the mouthpiece, and you can easily just hold on to that now with your lips or your teeth. You don't want to bite it too hard, especially if you have a hard plastic mouthpiece. I prefer the softer silicone ones, which we'll talk more about in just a little bit. So now you're at the yoke and you need to sit down. There's a lot of wrong ways to do this because you'll get tangled up in the hose, maybe if you use your habits to sit down. So to sit down correctly with the hose, you want to put the head of the pipe halfway between your near rail. You want to open the pipe like a door, and you want to walk into the bench, taking the hose with you a little bit. And you can sit down. You can get some work done, you can blow, and you can hold the hose loosely with your teeth to make sure you're not accidentally inflating the piece. To get up, it's the opposite. You stand up, you can hold the hose as you walk around, and then go about your business. So a little bit faster this time at normal speed. It can be rather fast. You can speed this up a little bit more if you're a little more proficient and comfortable with the pipe and handling the moving glass. You can flip it over your head and you're at your yoke. You can reverse that and flip it over. Make sure the pipe's coming out and around the rail as you're sitting down. And all that will have to do with how close your yoke is to the bench and other things. But that's a really easy way to get up. Now, when you want to take the hose off, you should ideally be done blowing, or maybe you're in between blowing processes. It's easiest to do it at the bench. So maybe I've just finished my jack line. I've got someone coming with the punty. I'll hold the hose with my teeth, right hand over left, holding onto the pipe. I can still turn my piece here because it might be moving and we don't want it to fall off center. My left hand is going to take the coupler and place it down at a right angle right here where it should be parked, as we talked about before. The mouthpiece goes right over it, and then I just cross it over, and that holds it in place. I can then go about my business, and the hose is right there ready to be picked up again if I need to inflate it. If you try to put the hose down on the rail when you're standing, it's pretty tricky. So I put that down, and then I think I got it locked, but it falls on the ground because it's not on the right side. It's not making a little half knot. That's why you want to put it on the rail when you're sitting down. So you'll notice the way I keep my hose while I'm working is completely free. It's moving down its full length. The length of the hose should be so that when it's attached to the pipe in your mouth, it's just above your shoe. If you need to shorten it a little bit when you get it because you're shorter, that's fine. Just cut some off and put the mouthpiece closer. You'll see a lot of creative ways that people manage the hose in the hot shop. And not that they're wrong, but they tend to reduce your options when you're moving around. So if you find that you're having trouble and you want to use maybe some little clips to hold it on your pocket or your collar, that can be done, but I'd urge you not to do that because it can restrict you. So for instance, when the hose is attached and free, if I want to blow up the glass while maybe the bottom of it is on the Marver, I can do that. And to do that, I just have to make sure the pipe stays behind me, that the hose is kind of over my shoulder so that the hose doesn't flop in and wrap around the pipe, so that stays behind me. And I can do that because I have the whole length to work with. I've seen some glass blowers that shorten their hose so that when you're at the bench, it's taut like this. That can work and it can keep it from binding up, but it leads to other problems. So I learned to just kind of dance with the hose and work with it naturally, which will take a little bit of practice, just as everything with glass blowing does. Now, there's a few different types of hoses out there. The main, most common ones you'll find are from Olympic, and they have a 1-inch version and a half-inch version. I'd recommend that most glass blowers get the half-inch because it's rubber and it can stretch over a wider pipe, especially if the taper is kind of gentle. Whereas if you have the 1-inch one and you're using a narrower pipe, it's not going to seal and it's going to fall off. They usually come with a plastic mouthpiece. As I said before, be careful about biting those too hard because they'll crack and then they won't be an air seal. The other point about these is that they have this white plastic end coupler to the rubber part. You want to make sure you can see a little bit of that white section. That will help keep your hose away from this rubber coupler, because if it goes in too far, it will bind up when you're turning, and then your hose is going to wrap around the pipe. So make sure you can see a little bit of that. The other thing that can happen is that the brass swivel can come apart. So if that happens, especially with these Olympic ones, you have a slight problem you got to fix quickly sometimes. You can take the shaft of the swivel and just make sure it falls through the little hole. Take a pair of tweezers, which should always be handy, and hold that tip in, and then you can press your hose back on. I've recently put together another type of hose. It can have the same problem. If it's too close, then my hose will catch the swivel and it will bind. But I find this easier to adjust when the time is needed because to adjust those two things can take longer. So this has a few less failure modes. And I've also put a little silicone e-cigarette mouth nib on there that's just on a little piece of stainless straw. So that's been really handy. I think that's about all I have to say about blow hoses at the moment, but if you have any questions, please feel free to send them along. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to see more instructional videos like this from Burnt Glass Works, please join us, and I'll see you next time.